In a few words, here is the program, a small welcome word and a prayer. And then we'll introduce the webinar and the speakers. Also at the beginning, Laura Morosini will give a small welcome word. And then we'll hear our three speakers. Professor Zbigniew Krysiak, head of the Institute of Schuman Thought, Svitlana Romanko, founder and director of the Ukrainian organization Razom We Stand, and Luca Jahier, who is the former president of the European Economic and Social Committee. And then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions to the speakers only through the chat. So please do not hesitate to put your questions in the chat during the webinar, either in English or in your own language, and the LSM staff will take care of translating the questions. And then at the end, at 8:30, we will offer you to join breakout rooms in your own language in order to speak about what the Laudato Si movement offers as call to actions for the European elections. I give the floor to Laura Morosini, Europe Programs Director of the Laudato Si movement.
Thank you, Eloi, and thank you all for being here. We are already more than 200, and I see the number is growing. That means there is a strong interest for this topic. So this topic is very important, the topic of this webinar. As the European Green Deal is having some difficult time, this ambitious program, and at the same time, it is the time for us all to decide how Europe can go toward peace. Pope wrote a few years ago, if you want peace, you need to protect creation, in a letter about peace. So it's also our topic tonight, and we know that decarbonization is a way will help to build peace, but we will see it deeper when the speakers will speak. I want to thank particularly Justice and Peace and Pax Christi, who were great partners for this event. And also our speakers, Professor Krysiak, Svitlana Romanko, and Luca Jahier. And also Amanda Romero, who will be from Pax Christi, who will be in the breakout room in Spanish. I take the occasion to remind this event will be recorded. And I take the occasion to remind to everyone who is supposed to record to launch the recording. And just a word to say that Laudato Si movement is a movement that wants to inspire and mobilize Catholics on the care of creation following the encyclical Laudato Si. I will not say more. You will have occasion in the breakout room to go further. And I leave you with Eloi for the prayer, the initial prayer coming from about Robert Schuman. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So now I suggest to take this small prayer that was written by Institut Saint-Benoît in the Diocese of Metz in France. It comes from a novena for peace through the intercession of the Venerable Robert Schuman, which makes sense with our webinar. So we can take a few minutes to read this prayer. Lord, you want your creatures to reflect your love, and for people to establish peace and solidarity bonds between themselves. Your servant Robert Schuman was a faithful peacemaker. He carried out his secular activities as an apostolate. he worked to build the first community of nations expressing the wish that Europe foreshadows the universal solidarity of the future. Through all his actions, he demonstrated that politics could be a path to holiness. Like your son, he was gentle and humble of heart. Grant that your church may soon honor the memory of Robert Schuman. Grant us the grace of peace in the world. Grant us, beloved Father, to be instruments of your holy will throughout our pilgrimage on earth, to conquer, through the beautiful combat of faith, the eternal life to which we are called to. And that, following the example of Robert Schuman, we may always live in accordance with your love. Amen. So this webinar, you understood, is in preparation of the EU elections that will take place beginning of June. So we have 3 speakers, and we will reflect on our role as Christians in participating in civic and political life through the figure of Robert Schuman. Then we'll take the example of Russia's invasion of Ukraine to reflect on how Europe is dependent of fossil fuels, which is a big problem, of course, for climate change. We all know that, but also it causes geopolitical dependency. And then we'll see with the last speaker, Luca Jahier, how Europe can build peace in the future, especially through the ecological transition and phasing out of fossil fuels. So we'll take a look at the future. And we have our 3 speakers. Thank you, all the 3 speakers, for being here. Professor Zbigniew Krysiak. He's the head of the Institute of Schuman Thought and professor of finance in Poland. Then we have Svitlana Romanko. She is the founder and director of Razom We Stand, Ukrainian grassroots movement calling for total and permanent embargo of Russian fossil fuels since the beginning of the war. And then Luca Jahier, who is the former president of the European Economic and Social Committee. And he's just published a book called, in English, Making Europe, Making Peace, Reflections and Provocations to Avoid the Collapse of the European Project. So he well thought of the future of the European Union towards peace. And he's here to talk about it. And let me start by giving the floor to Prof. Krysiak, who is going to talk in around 10 minutes about how Robert Schuman can inspire us Catholics of today. Prof. Krysiak, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. The screen, I'm just trying to should be Zoom, right? And now, do you see my presentation now?
We don't see it currently.
So what's, I just pressed.
Should be a button on the.
What about now? Not yet.
Not yet. Yes.
Share. Okay. What
yes.
about now?
Now we see it. Right? Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I see you have my photos. I mean, since 10 years ago. So I was looking very young. This is, you know, time is going ahead. So thank you very much for the invitation. My presentation I just have under the title, Return to Schuman's Europe. So I think, you know, the topics and the current issues going around in Europe about the, Green Deal and the energy transformations and all these things. Myself, I am an economist. So in my opinion, and as well as Robert Schuman was approaching, that without any very strong fundamental values, these different actions are going to be not successful. As we notice, current discussions about, these things creates many disputes, and even some kind of the strong creates strong positions between the countries, and the basically centralized approach of the Brussels is very not accepted by many countries, especially in the Central Europe. We are in a very strong cooperation, so there is not the mode we are accepting. That Brussels is going from the position of the kind of a superstate. And Schuman basically highlighted that relations, the spirit, of course, institutions and economics, but without the relations, nothing going to be successful. As we know, current Schuman is in the process of beatification process, and Schuman was called, in the prayer, which we get from the Vatican, as a disciple of a Christ in the politics. So nowadays, in some explanations of this conference, you indicated that, the question about what are the challenges for Christians currently. So for the Christians, challenges are just to follow Robert Schuman's and to be disciples of a Christ in the politics. So Schuman itself was very, a special person approaching to other people in a very gentle way. And he was, in fact, very much indeed devoted to faith, and his spiritual life was very strong. So this strength was moving him, to create relations and to, as you know, of course, create the coal and steel, community, and as well the economic community. And the approach of a Schuman was, to create a community of European nations, not a uniform, not a superstate. And from some point of time, the Altiero Spinelli, ideology started to demolish, this basically this idea of a community of European nations. And there were some other steps which were basically more and more deeply, destructive for his idea and for his model of the European community of European nations. And Schuman created a kind of a conceptualization which is related to the cooperation between the spiritual authority and the civil authority. So sometimes we hear that, some people say to separate the church from the government, separate the church from the state. And the Schuman approach was that the human being is a holistic, composed from a body and from the spirit. So he's saying that these two basically authorities should serve in the serve the people and be very much cooperative together. So nowadays we notice that the unity, solidarity is under the danger, and the implication is the war. So it's a challenge to come back to create the unity and the solidarity. We notice very much indeed the less and less solidarity around the European Union. And this is a very big danger that this will trigger a kind of a war, probably not a military war. And Schuman was highlighting, this 5, important, things. And he, defined the democracy, saying that the democracy is under the danger without the Christian values. He said that the Europe shouldn't be based on the economic and the institutions, but rather on the spirit and the community, the relations, which was for him very much indeed. And he, warned about the, approach to create a superstate. He was saying that since the superstate will be created, there will be a bankruptcy of this great idea of the community of European nations. Patriotism, she's again highlighting that the patriotism is love to not only my nation, but to love to other nations. From the Christian approach is that if you say you love your nation and you hate others, so you are a liar. So it means the love is, love not can exclude the love to others or include the hate. So this concept of the community of Schuman was really very much indeed based on this big principles of Christian values. And democracy, he's saying, without Christian values, this will be anti-Christian democracy and the totalitarian, body. So he's basically defining the three, type of models: nationalist state, superstate, and the community, according to the Robert Schuman. So we see that the patriotism, the community is highlighted very much indeed, and the other models are really not that which we could basically accept. So a kind of what to do if there is a lack of a leader for activists and the politicians in Europe. So the people who are politicians who are struggling, who are heading to the superstate, their leader is Altiero Spinelli. And we need to have a leader in a real sense, Robert Schuman. So what to do? Create the Schuman groups at the national parliaments, create the Schuman's groups at the European parliaments, establish the pan-European movement of a Schuman's Europe, establish International Christian Experts Group, organize in September, this is our proposal, in this year, a summit in Poland for establishing the European Schuman's movement, and integrate Christian activists from Europe around the Universal University of Applications of Christian Social Science in semi-weekly basis on the internet on MS Teams platform, so that bring to integrate this a society, this movement of Robert Schuman, to really a very effective and ongoing basis activity. And finally, establishing the European School of Social and Political Servants. So these are, proposals and suggestions what to do so that, to integrate this, Christian society and to create a community of us, from different sides, and to be more active, more integrated, and through that as well, very influential. So one of the person who is still
Professor Krysiak, maybe you can try to conclude.
Yes, this is last sentence. Yeah, one of the person who is still alive, Professor Gebhardt, you see him. he was associated, he worked together with the Robert Schuman. He is still alive in Poland. I think there is only 2 or 3 people still alive who cooperated in the Robert Schuman in entire Europe. And we are in a very close cooperation with him. He delivered much of that direct contact with Robert Schuman, and one of these, pictures is just Professor Gebhardt, the young person, and the Robert Schuman on some congress. At the time when Schuman was very active. So thank you very much for attention, and that's all what I wanted just to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. And now, after seeing the figure of Robert Schuman, we'll see how now in contemporary Europe, how fossil fuels fuel war, and how it puts Europe in geopolitical dependencies. And the best example, of course, is the example of Ukraine. And I'm very happy to welcome Svitlana Romanko, who is going to talk about her experience on this topic. So Svitlana, I give you the floor.
Thank you so much, and I am really proud and happy to be tonight, this evening, with you all, and thank you so much for joining the Laudato Si movement event. And I am representing Razom We Stand, which is, as said, Ukrainian independent grassroots movement to fight Russian aggression with economic means, basically defunding Russian fossil fuel industry and seizing all investments into Russian fossil fuel companies as well. And I will, and also the other part, more hopeful, that brings us hope of our activities, is to rebuild Ukraine powered by entirely renewable energy, which can become a global showcase for renewable energy transition in the countries that are affected and attacked in some cases as well by fossil fuel dictatorship. And just to provide you with an example, there are 52 countries across the globe, in many of which maybe your acquaintances or friends or even family members live, that are currently led and ruled by fossil fuel dictators. And looking into today's topic, which is of course fossil fuel war, and how the fossil fuels fund military conflicts and violation of human rights, and also the misery and grief for many families, as in Ukraine and in other regions of the world when fossil fuel profits fund the aggression. I certainly can say that this is such a milestone moment for Europe in light of upcoming elections in June. And we all, of course, understand that what happens when populist parties will try to take over the European democratic institutions. And I am here to bring us some hope that we can all make this not happen in the future on the Ukraine example. And just sharing a story, I'm speaking today from Kyiv, from our beautiful capital, which is really strong and resilient towards attacks. But at the same time, just recently, at the end of March, many thermal power plants, which were fired by coal, so because its energy came from coal, were destroyed under the Russian attacks. And we currently miss that much energy infrastructure that many families are going to lack electricity and power supply. And at my home yesterday, not yesterday, on Sunday, where it's this beautiful day, family day, we did not have power supply for the most part of the day and evening, and there was night, but it was a safe night. that night with no major attacks. So we are grateful for that as well. But going back to the role of the fossil fuel experts in prolonging the Russian war against Ukraine. The first, this is that war would not be happening without Russia's fossil fuel export income, which we know is huge. And Europe shockingly continued with their dependency, for example, with Germany's support for Nord Stream 2, even after the brutal Russian attacks 10 years ago in Crimea and the Donbass. And there is an urgent need for immediate sanctions to hold financial support for Russian aggression. And since I will be just mentioning a few key numbers, which are really shocking. First, the shocking in profit that Russia has literally made on Ukrainian blood, because they earned about 660 billion euros in revenues from fossil fuel exports, and European Union countries purchased for more than 192 billions. So you see this percentage is quite high, but the colossal revenue highlights the direct link between fossil fuel income and Russia's capacity to fund its seemingly never-ending war chest. It's unacceptable that EU citizens are unwillingly contributing to funding over 125 alleged war crimes in Ukraine. But we know that there are much more, and when there are explosions and drones and missiles attacks, that many children die in their beds with their families, with their moms hugging them, and this must stop. This must stop. This suffering must stop. And especially just bringing you another numbers that translates to equivalent of every EU citizen effectively handing over approximately 420 euros to the Kremlin, like just handing this money. Every single European buys, but yeah, in fact, people did not do that. Yes, they did not hand money to Putin and to Russia, but buying fossil fuels, the authorities and EU rulers made this happen. And over the past 2 years, the EU has shown a steadfast commitment to supporting Ukraine in the common struggle against the aggression. We also wanted to acknowledge this and thank for this, and recognizing Russia's war as an onslaught on international rules-based order, democracy, and human rights. But however, the EU's recent aid commitment represents just 27% of their total fossil fuel imports purchased from Russia since the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022. And more needs to be done to support Ukraine and wean the EU off of the Russian fossil fuel exports that fund the war, including a complete phase out of Russian pipeline gas and Russian LNG gas. And Russian LNG accounted for 5% of the EU total gas consumption for 2023. This is a huge leapfrog starting from 2022, when the share was 40%. So we see successful reduction of Russian gas consumption across the EU from 40% to 5%. But meanwhile, Russia relied on the EU for half of all of its LNG earnings in 2023. So the pipeline gas declined, the LNG gas grew up and inclined. And Russia is clearly more reliant on the EU as a market to sell its LNG rather than the EU is reliant on Russia to source its gas. We are now into the third year of horrific Russian full-scale invasion, and the EU imports of Russian LNG have not dropped at all. In fact, in the second year of the invasion, EU import volumes of Russian LNG remain over 30% higher than the year before the invasion. And the leading countries, leading in the very bad sense, are Spain, first of all, because about 80% of LNG exports is going to Spain. In spite, Spain is hugely promoting renewables and is powered partially by renewables, but still loves Russian gas. The same with France, unfortunately, and France is hugely supporting Ukraine in the military and with humanitarian aid as well, but not in sense of saying no to Russian LNG. And we must understand one simple thing, which is very true, that we can't do both things at time. We can't rebuild Ukraine in full and make people happy and make Ukrainians just live their lives at the same time continuing buying businesses, making business as usual on fossil fuels. This is a paramount knowledge that Europe has to learn is that it's not possible. And coming to the old model of business and fossil fuel consumption is not possible. We have to say no to Russian fossil fuels. And unfortunately, not all the countries are follow the suit of promotion of the renewables. We know that there are some countries, Slovakia, Hungary, who are directly opposing and just trying to keep their pipeline gas from Russia flowing. And there should not be excuse for them because there was a transition period as well. And what can be done with a sense of how we find the solution to this issue? 2 years ago, it seemed impossible for Europe to switch off from Russian gas and reduce the gas consumption. Europe must continue reduce the gas consumption because it's key for the Green Deal implementation. And I just recently read the Politico article which says that Europe currently does not hold huge money for actually implementing European Green Deal, but they can have it. Oxford Research, which we currently got commenced with the partners and the Oxford University the last May 2023 says that if Europe will reduce their gas consumption, especially from Russia, by 2027, they will save about over 500 billions of euros for the green energy transition. And from other side, why it's so important for Europe to end the war, to win the war against Russia and Putin and stop the war in general? Because it's economically disadvantageable for European economy, and the money that Europe could potentially spend to European Green Deal, they have to spend for military, for producing more weapons, and for trying to build the security systems to protect, to defend the European Union citizens. And we can see how the peace and climate protection go hand in hand, and also how energy security is important across the European continent. But how do we achieve this all together with the Europeans? First of all, with plugging loopholes to ensure the effectiveness of sanctions and prevent any avenues for financing Russian barbaric war in Ukraine, which has already killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people, and it continues. And every single Ukrainian aged of 18 and more is now involved into the direct fight. But what happens if there are no more Ukrainians to defend the country and defend Europe? So we must think about this, because it's a very humane approach that fossil fuel must not prevail and peace must save lives. A ban of Russian LNG imports, which we are trying to negotiate, like really to pressure the European Union and European Commission for in Europe, should no longer be only a distant goal. The gas storage in Europe is ample, and projections indicate the energy surplus bolstered by record-breaking clean energy expansion and alternative LNG supplies set to come online in 2024. So Ukraine is poised to enhance the EU's gas supply security and leveraging its abundant gas storage capacities that has already demonstrated effectiveness in stabilizing winter prices across Europe. And we are so thankful to Europeans that it's almost the third winter and European people still support Ukrainians. They don't freeze in their homes, they reduce gas consumption, because that was real solidarity is. And meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, US LNG exports reached unprecedented monthly and annual peaks in December, positioning the US as a frontrunner to become the largest LNG exporter in 2023. But there was also a huge progress achieved also with our support from Ukraine and from Europe. It was posing on all new areas. So I am concluding already that Europe's newfound energy independence must be leveraged to completely sever ties with Russian oil and gas once and for all. And most importantly, supporting Ukraine to build back better is essential for its long-term recovery, resilience, and economic prosperity of all Europe. And to mitigate the risk of humanitarian catastrophe, increased funding for the construction of decentralized energy sources, such as wind installation and local solar panels, offers reliable energy without the need for expensive fossil fuel imports, and could prove to be vital for Ukraine's reconstruction. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Svitlana, for all those information and thanks for your knowledge you shared. Now, so I remind you, please do not hesitate to ask your questions in the chat for the two first speakers and for Luca Jahier also.
Thank you, and good evening to everybody, and it's a pleasure to be with you. So I will try to say a few concepts in this short 10 minutes that I have. The first is that to look how Europe can contribute also with this energy transformation to the future of peace, we have to look a little to the past. Europe was created for building peace. And I do think that we should come back to read the text that I consider the most important political text of the last century, that is the Schuman Declaration. We'll celebrate in a few days, on the 9th of May, this European Day that de facto celebrate the Schuman Declaration written 74 years ago. And in this declaration, it's very clear what was the core of the proposal. The founding fathers started from the merging of the coal and steel production that has been used by far to feed the war, to transform war economy into ties of shared progress. I wish to spend just 1 minute to explain to you what was the big revolution done by this Schuman Declaration that originally was a letter sent by Schuman to the German government as a French proposal to turn the page of the war. You know that the logic of any end of a war, where there is a winner and a loser, there is a treaty, an armistice, a so-called treaty of peace, and the conclusion usually is that the winner take everything and the loser will pay the bill. And that has been also this at the end of the Second World War. An high authority was established in the Rhine Basin to take stock of the management of all the richness of this land, was the border land between France and Germany, and all the profit of this steel and coal production was given to the winners, and the German has nothing. Schuman proposed to close this authority and to establish a new unit of production, as he called in his manifesto, where a new authority should be established jointly by France and Germany, open to other countries, and there were 6. The first one to sign the SECA agreement was the first treaty of European Union, and to share on a common basis the exploitation of coal and steel, and to share in common the benefit of the transforming the war economy into lives of shared progress. So it has been the first time in history when such an agreement between winners and losers of such an impressive war has been done. And this has funded what the European Union is today. This idea has become the leverage of the enormous progress that Europe has done. Our development model, born with the Industrial Revolution and developed thanks to this intuition of Robert Schuman, and also established the European Economic Community, that was the predecessor of the European Union, has been capable of generating growth in economic capital, in human capital, in social capital. And United Europe has made a formidable contribution in this regard, generating better income and living standard, public services, education, training, and welfare. We have built de facto the strongest social market economy in the world. Translating this, Europe is still today, with all its problems, the better place in the world where to born, to die, to live, to work, to be protected, to be cured, and to be assisted, and also to make a business and to make enterprise. Unfortunately, we have achieved all of this at the expense of natural capital land and raw material consumption, destroying ecosystem, pollution, are leading today to extreme phenomena that, if not stopped, will irreversibly alter our future of the Earth. So today we have to renew this original pact that was created, invented by Schuman and by the founding fathers of Europe. And the way to renew this pact is that Europe embrace a new vocation, the sustainable development. I have defined this agenda for sustainable development when I took the presidency of the SE in 2018 as a social contract for the 21st century. The European Union has endorsed that, in particular, since the beginning of this current legislation, 2018 to 2024, the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The agenda pushing for climate neutrality is actually a complete transformation of our economic model. It looks with great foresight also social, economic, and institutional issues. The agenda of Europe, as it is fixed in what the Europeans lawmakers call the annual sustainable growth agenda, that make the basis of all the construction of the economic governance, is based now on 4 pillars: stability, productivity, environment, and fairness, with a common logic that under this concept of sustainable competitiveness is linking the future of Europe. Systemic crises such as COVID and subsequently the unprovoked and justifiable war unleashed by Putin in Ukraine in violation of full international law have made it even more evident that Europe must accelerate in building its own strategic autonomy, both externally but also internally. This will lead of a new agenda of forward-looking de facto solidarity. And such autonomy, if you want to respect the commitment toward climate neutrality and even accelerate of them as decided by United Nations in 2023, cannot but pass through the construction of a true European energy union. We already demonstrated, as the previous speaker said, the enormous capacity of Europe don't to be kept in the trap of Russia with the gas challenge, because in 1 year we lower our dependency at an incredible low level of gas, of course, not of other. But the war in Ukraine has clearly shown to all of us how dangerous, immoral, and totally unsustainable our dependence on Russia gas is, but also on other fossil sources coming from undemocratic and very much unstable countries. So for Europe to embrace this agenda is not only to cope with the engagement of the climate change of the 2030 UN Sustainable Agenda, but also to build up a new security and strategic autonomy. For example, in the Mediterranean part of Europe, and looking to the both sides of the Mediterranean, that this both sides, the European one and the Arabic one, enjoys invaluable natural resources, which instead of being exploited and endangered, can be used to produce clean energy. In this area, a model similar to what the Union of Steel and Coal established at the time of the CECA by the Schuman proposal could be established to share this production in common and so to build peace for common progress and stability in that region. So this model could also be fruitful for today. However, all these changes that are needed for this direction will require impressive investment, for example, in interoperability, greater energy efficiency, research, and development generative innovation. We have done already a lot, but a lot remains to be done. For example, to change this model, this will touch directly how and where we live. Greening the house, school, hospital, buildings, they represent 40% of the CO2 production. Or how we move people and goods, but also how we produce. To change our production model, our industrial model, to a low energy production model, but also for a more strategic autonomy, revising the long value chain model that we have chosen, de facto decided that China would have become the fabric of the world and we are the market of Chinese production. This will take a need of enormous resources, but also of enormous decision. We can no longer in Europe, as European Union, look into the future, to the challenge after European election, to continue by small step. This strategy will no longer work. We have already experimented during these 5 years, the COVID first and the Russian war after, that we need drastic and very urgent and very massive change. We need a sort of what I define a quantum leap towards a federal union with a real budget, fair fiscal policy, and an investment capacity based on trust in a shared future. And it also takes a new sense of community that will need a new way to understand as European, sharing a common territory, a common space, but also a common strategy. Europe was born, as I told at the beginning, to make peace. Pope Francis urges us to dream, to be dream builders. And since he also said that space is more important than time, and I wish to end this short contribution to your debate, to the future, by coming back to the past, building a sort of circle to return to the founding fathers. The Schuman Declaration begins its text with this word: world peace cannot be safeguarded without the making of creative effort proportionate to the dangers which threaten it. A united Europe, continued the manifesto, was not achieved, and we had war. And in another phrases, it says, by pooling basic production, by instituting a new high authority, whose decision will bind France, Germany, and the other member countries, this proposal will lead to the realization of the first concrete foundation of European Federation that will make impossible in Europe the war and will lead to the preservation of peace. So I do think that never such an exhortation old of 74 years is so true and up to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hear the echo. Do you hear the echo as well? Yes. Sorry. It sounds good. Thank you very much, Luca Jahier, for this intervention. And thanks to all the three speakers. Now we have around 10 minutes to ask questions. So please do not hesitate to ask questions to any speaker in the chat directly. You can ask it in English or in your own language, and we translate it. So let me start with the first question. Those are hard questions, and either you can all answer, or one of you can answer depending on how you feel it. The first one is, how can we put pressure on European politicians when we see that even the Greens are supporting policies that roll back European climate commitments and increase fossil fuels? And they also support increased arms production, weapon productions, instead of negotiating peace. That's a very large question, but if one of the speakers want to answer, Svitlana, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I wanted to touch upon the negotiation piece as a woman whose life is affected hugely by the war and whose family is affected. And I don't think that Europe can and will take over negotiating peace for Ukraine or any other country will, because we understand, and history has proven us multiple times, that negotiation with the devil did not pay off, I would say so. And we have the same situation when everyone is saying that, yeah, you have to negotiate, but negotiation is not possible. We will need to invent a new ways of building peace, which is reliant and which will allow the nation at least survive and win over dictator, because and I wanted to link here what is happening in Ukraine and how Putin went unaccountable for his crimes and for the Russian army crimes in Ukraine, even not being put into the International Criminal Court and put under other responsibility and accountability, and this led to the other military aggression we can see rising in different countries, in MENA region, and Iran attacking Israel again. So, and we will see more and more of this conflict if we won't invent a new model which will work for the global peace. And because, what is happening right now, I don't think that someone who has not been to Ukraine, who has not lost a family in the war, or someone they loved for in the war, or their house was not destroyed, has the right to judge in this regard. So, and I don't think that negotiation will bring peace to Ukraine, and every Ukrainian will tell you this, because we want freedom, independence, and sovereignty of our country, and this is a constant threat we are living for almost 10 years, and our country is attacked for 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Svitlana and Luca Jahier.
This is, of course, a very large question, and would need another conference to answer to this, but I want only to say three very short issues. First, to negotiate peace, you should be in two to want to negotiate peace. And it is very clear that Russia and Putin and Moscow, they do not want to negotiate any peace, but impose completely their agenda. This is the way they consider a peace negotiation. The second is that when we discuss about negotiating peace, we should never forget, as already Svitlana, if I'm not wrong, has said, that we have to think to a just peace. A peace is not the one to run and the other win. Above all, in a case when superpower and nuclear power has decided to invade a country and to destroy entire country, because this is the case. And the third one, we should become more adult in the question of defense. We cannot forget that at the very beginning, the founding fathers of Europe, and so Schuman, Adenauer, and De Gasperi, three Catholics that have in common the fact that they speak all German, because they have a German culture, they were thinking to three communities. The community of steel and coal, the economic community, and the European community of defense. That after was destroyed by the change of the government in France, and they say no. Because the third pillar would have been to build up a European common defense, to put in common the army, to make clear that Europe was no more a matter of the state. And this has not happened. And today, just to be very frank and clear with all of us, this, I say, is a very complex dossier, not to be discussed in an answer. The 27 European member states defense expenditure that are raising are 3 times the Russian expenditure in defense. The European defense expenditure are equal to China expenditure in defense, and European defense of all 27 member states expenditure are 35%, 40% of the US expenditure. But Europe, with all this defense expenditure, has not more than 10% of the US capability to resist to any confrontation or to guarantee the defense of Europe, if not covered by US defense. This is what it means not to having done European community of defense that was one of the 3 communities in the mind of the founding fathers. So we have to become more serious in this, and perhaps, of course, we should have done this common defense in time of peace. Today, we are in a time of war. It will be more complicated and more costly, but it is also a challenge for the future European agenda.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Professor Krysiak.
I would like to remind you that, the war by Russia triggered in 2014, attacking Ukraine. So this war takes quite a longer time than we think. And at that time, in 2008, 2009, Poland was suggesting to join Ukraine to the European Union. But the Germany, Angela Merkel, and probably France was against. And the reason they were against, they made a business with the Russia. And nowadays is the same. So the Germany is doing a business with the Russia. And Ursula von der Leyen, as a representative of Germany, basically is collaborating in that process. So let's be aware about the reality. On the 5th day of the war, Germans said, we will not help because Russia will win over 10 next days. And Poland pressed Germany to deliver some military equipment. So what they did, they sent some 5,000 helmets, which were not be able to use. And over a long time, Germany, in fact, is just postponing that, because the previous chancellors of the Germany are very good friends of the Putin, as you know, Schroeder and so on. So be realistic. And the be realistic means that we need to challenge the, conservative politicians, Christian politicians, to win the coming elections. We need to challenge to come to Schuman and to stay against the Spinelli apostles. So let's stay, be, against the superstate. Because the superstate, if you don't know, is supported by the Russia. About $4 billion every year is just engaged in the different lobbying activity in Brussels, coming from Russia. So this is a truth. So we need to create a movement of millions in Europe going, following Schuman. I would like to remind you the Poland solidarity, won in 2089, finally. Why? Because there were 10 million members of the solidarity. We are not able to win with the military equipment. These groups of supporters of Russia, which are people from Spinelli, but we are able, to win, creating a big pan-European movement. Currently is a very good time because the farmers from all countries and as well the other groups are really hating that model of European Union. We like European Union will be a community of European nations. We like to be together, but we don't like this model which brings us to the bankruptcy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's 8:32. Unfortunately, we could ask only one question, but time flies and it's the game. So I'm very sorry about that. And I want to say thank you to the three speakers, Svitlana Romanko, Luca Jahier, and Zbigniew, Professor Krysiak. I will never be able to pronounce your name. I'm very sorry, but thank you for being here. And now we offer you to join breakout rooms for your language. So we won't have any interpretation problems anymore, as people will speak in the language, in your language. And it's half an hour to introduce you to what the Laudato Si movement, what are our call to actions towards the European elections. So I'm going to activate them. And please, you can just choose the right breakout room in the right language. Thank you for participating to this bigger room. And thanks for our three speakers. Thank you.
How can you go to the group? You choose your name?
Yes, you should, the breakout rooms should appear now.
Yes, yes.
So you can just click on the one of your language.
But I have here broadcast and close all rooms. So
Sorry, it should be Spanish for you. Do you see?
Yeah, that's Spanish for me, but
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't see the I don't have the I am not sent to the breakout room.
Okay, let me see.
Thank you, Amanda, for being here.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Amanda.
Yeah.
I will put you in the right breakout room, Amanda.
Yes, please, so I can start with the Spanish. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
It can take a little time to go in the breakout room, but we see the number is decreasing, so. Hello, Christopher, I see your hand is raised, but maybe you can write in a chat. So we cannot open the microphones, but thank you. Thank you very much for being here. you for your questions. I think the breakout room are are being assigned. I see Christopher Schoch, which is from Climate Watch, raise his hand. Do you want to say a word while we are moving in the breakout rooms?
All right. Yes. All right. Well, I'm waiting for an assignment to the breakout room. And I should be with the French group. But
Okay.
I don't think I am. With Anne
Dutrieu.
Dutrieu.
I think
And can anyone move me to the room, because I cannot move myself?
That's the problem.
I think Eloi is the master of this, so we need him. I think he's trying to make it go faster because it was very quick from 200 to 100, and now it's getting very slow. So I think he's trying to solve this.
Yes, we are pioneers. Okay. Huh? No, all right.
Eloi, are you with us?
I cannot see Eloi, but I cannot move myself, Laura. So
We need Eloi. So thank you for your patience. I'm sure Eloi is solving. Maybe if our speakers are still here, maybe we can enjoy this supplementary time for a few more questions, but I don't know if our speakers are still here or not. Lana, are you here? No, it looks not. So we still have the question, but we don't have the speakers anymore. There was an interesting question about how to get rid of fossil fuels, how to live without fossil fuels in Europe. And I saw it was a question for Laudato Si movement members. So maybe I take the occasion to not to give a full answer, but to say a few words on this. We are working very much on this. There are many tools. For instance, for Christian organization, Laudato Si Action Platform helps to evaluate our greenhouse gases of our organization and to reduce them. In many other countries, there are other tools like Green Church, Église Verte, or others, and individual tools also in the Laudato Si Action Platform. Maybe someone can share the link in the chat. There are tools for families also, not only for big organizations. And for instance, I can give a little personal testimony, as in the city where I have moved recently, called Uzerche, in the middle of France. This little city is completely energy positive. It makes more energy, a little more, almost the same, that the consumption, only with renewable energies. So it's possible. It's good to remind it's not a dream, but it's possible to live with neutral impact. So it's getting better. We only are 40. We were 80 just before. Maybe I enjoy also this time to tell you what is, you will have several information in the breakout rooms about how we can invite candidates also to lists for European election to take into account and to decide to commit on phasing out fossil fuel, especially through fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty that was already voted in the European Parliament, but just as a suggestion. It's not a European decision yet, but it could be. There is a strong will from little states in the Pacific, which are need badly us to decrease climate change, to limit climate change in order to live, just to live. And it was the will. Colombia also decided to support this, and the Vatican also decided to support this. So we are asking the candidates to commit in supporting this initiative, and you will have more information in the breakout rooms. And also, I can just tell you that our next event after this event tonight will be on May 20th. On May 20th, there will be a big European study on how Catholics are living Laudato Si, are dealing with climate change and ecology. There was a big study in 20 European countries, and it will be presented on May 20th in Rome and online. So if you're interested, you can you will receive, as you register tonight, you will receive an email to invite you to participate to this event. So I hope you will be interested. It's something very new, a big study for more than 1 year that evaluated how Christian organization, Catholic organization, Bishop Conference, NGOs, congregation lived Laudato Si, took initiative and commitments on climate change and ecology.